Shelagh Fogarty on LBC.
With Bupa Business, supporting business leaders' mental health.
I think it's an underestimation, isn't it? Or an understatement, I should say, to say that Donald Trump has been a busy man this week. First of all, it was the French president. Then it was our own Prime Minister Keir Starmer yesterday. Today, he's meeting the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He's in Washington to meet up with Donald Trump, where they are due to discuss, amongst other things, that minerals deal, and I'm sure much else besides about the potential ending of this war. Simon Marks joins me, LBC's Washington correspondent. Simon, we're focusing here this hour on whether the meeting yesterday has shifted people's sense of who Keir Starmer is. Slightly different tone to this meeting, isn't it? It's more substantial in a way, this meeting.
Yeah, very much so, Sheila. And I think the big question going into this meeting is whether Volodymyr Zelensky is going to be able to shift Donald Trump's view of who Volodymyr Zelensky is. Because 10 days ago, Donald Trump was describing Volodymyr Zelensky as a dictator, not a word that he has ever used to describe the aggressor in this conflict, Russian President Vladimir Putin. Yesterday, flanked by the Prime Minister, the American president pretended that he didn't remember having described Volodymyr Zelensky as a dictator, but evaded the question of whether he is going to apologise to the Ukrainian leader for a whole raft of disinformation that has tumbled from President Trump's lips over the last several weeks, including this oft-stated claim that more than half the money that the United States has provided in assistance to Ukraine has gone missing. In fact, not a single dollar of that money has gone missing, according to independent analysis by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a highly respected think tank here in Washington. Donald Trump, of course, has also accused Zelensky of being a dictator who has evaded the need to hold elections in the same way as Winston Churchill, the man whose bust graces the Oval Office, didn't hold elections when he was leading the UK during wartime in the Second World War. And then, of course, there is this minerals deal, which is going to be at the centre of today's meeting. Donald Trump certainly thinks that Volodymyr Zelensky is coming here to sign it. It remains extremely controversial. The mere notion that the United States should be front of the queue for getting payment back for the assistance it provided to Ukraine, payment the size of which, assistance the size of which, Donald Trump constantly overstates. Sometimes he says it's 300 billion. Yesterday he was talking about 350 billion. At other times in the last few days he cited a figure of 500 billion. In reality, it's about 120 billion. And a lot of that money got spent by design in the United States. It wasn't sent to Ukraine, but he keeps saying we're in for $350 billion. You know, I was talking to one former senior administration official a few days ago, a Republican, who told me that this minerals deal is extortion, pure and simple, by the United States, and who went on to say, but what do you expect from a mafia group now running the country? So there is pressure on Zelensky, even from some Republicans here who have been steadfast in their support for Ukraine in its effort to repulse the Russian invaders. There's pressure on him not to sign this deal. Now, you know, to be fair to the United States, it was Zelensky who first proposed the idea of giving the United States some access to Ukraine's rare earths, like lithium, those valuable minerals that are believed to lie below Ukrainian soil. You know, he probably overplayed his hand when he initially made that suggestion to Donald Trump, because he didn't expect Trump to take the idea and run with it.
Also, I spoke to Andrew Marr just half an hour ago or so, and on this question of what this deal, if it happens, will mean in terms of American presence, physical presence on the ground. I mean, clearly it will mean some physical presence, and there will be security around that presence. I suppose the big question is, but would it be more than just security around that business? Would it also mean that America would wade in Ukraine if it needed to?
Well, it certainly doesn't sound like that from what Donald Trump was saying yesterday. I mean, as you know, the Prime Minister's offer to put British peacekeepers on the ground in Ukraine to help enforce any peace agreement has been welcomed by the White House, but they continue to play very fast and loose with this idea of a security backstop being provided by the United States. Listen to what Donald Trump had to say yesterday in the Oval Office, flanked by the Prime Minister.
I've always found about the British, they don't need much help. They can take care of themselves very well. You know what? No, it sounds like it's evasive, but it's not evasive. The British have been incredible soldiers, incredible military, and they can take care of themselves. But if they need help, I'll always be with the British, okay? I'll always be with them. But they don't need help.
If they need help, I'll be with the British, but they don't need help.
Vague. Yeah.
I mean, very, very, very vague. I mean, his argument is there will be Americans digging up Ukraine in a search for lithium and those rare earth minerals, and Vladimir Putin wouldn't dare attack them because he would know that a massive American response would follow. That is very, having some geologists and some guys with big digging equipment on Ukrainian soil is very different from providing the kind of security backup that the Prime Minister and quite possibly other European leaders are going to demand.
Right, gosh. I mean, sorry to say gosh in the middle of it. I'm a bit breathless. I know, I was going to say, a bit breathless by it. So clearly, the mineral deal, the whole question of what happens next in the hoped for peace deal. But it was interesting yesterday to see Donald Trump say, dictator. Did I call him a dictator? I don't know why I would do that. Goodness me. Anyway, let's move on. I mean, I guess Zelensky is going to have to do a little bit of what, or maybe a lot of what Keir Starmer did, and just, as we say in Liverpool, act soft.
Yeah, I mean, I think the message of the week, the lesson of the week from both Emmanuel Macron on Monday and the Prime Minister yesterday is that flattery will get you quite a way down the road. It won't get you exactly everywhere that you want to go. But we saw Emmanuel Macron first on Monday, and then the Prime Minister, going to the max yesterday, not just in terms of flattering the President for having had the courage to bring about a peace negotiation in Ukraine, but, obviously that masterstroke where the Prime Minister pulls the letter from the King out of his pocket and presents it to President Trump, which sort of conditioned the atmosphere for all the talks that were going to follow. And yet there were still evident restrictions on what the Prime Minister was able to achieve on the issue of security guarantees. I think we're still very opaque about what this trade deal, or as the Prime Minister characterised it, an economic agreement, is really going to be all about. Zelensky walks in to that Oval Office today after having had his name dragged through the mud by the President of the United States, reflective of the MAGA argument, the Make America Great Again argument, that Zelensky should never have been on the receiving end of American largesse. There is obvious sympathy towards the Russians and to Vladimir Putin personally by President Trump. And Zelensky is going to have to also find a way of trying to win Trump over. But as with the Prime Minister yesterday, even when Zelensky departs the White House today, you've got to wonder how much all of this is going really to change Donald Trump's mind about anything, or whether in a week's time we're going to be back to reading head-spinning dispatches from the White House reporting pool about things that the President has said about the Ukrainian leader, and who knows, maybe even about the Prime Minister.
We shall see. I'm hoping I'll talk to you after the fact when they've met. Thank you very much, Simon. Simon Marks, LBC's Washington correspondent. If I don't, I'm sure somebody else on LBC will, so you can get a reflections from Simon after that meeting has taken place.